invitation here. I should tell you that I'm very impressed by this visit since this morning. I have been visiting and talking to people, and I'm here this evening and able to meet with you and to share with you some views, and really it's an honor and a pleasure for me to be with you. So thank you for this introduction. And I hope that with this discussion this evening, we'll be able to get a better sense of what are our common challenges. Because even though the title of tonight is Radical Reform of the Muslim Minds, I really think that by talking from within, many of you from your own tradition, religious or philosophical traditions, you will find parallels and mirroring questions that I'm trying to raise from within, but also to try to face the challenges of our time. So let me start straight away with some of the questions that are so important for me that I've been trying to tackle in many books from within the Islamic tradition, but also in our discussion with the West and within the Muslim majority countries. So 3 points that I want to highlight as an introduction to the topic is that today we can deny the fact that there is a clash of civilizations, and to say and to repeat against what was said first by the thesis of Samuel Huntington, which by the way was misunderstood. To say that there is no clash of civilizations. And this is what I said from the very beginning, that even though I disagreed with the rationale of what he was saying, there is still something that we have to acknowledge. There is no clash of civilizations, but there is a clash of perceptions. Our perception of the other, if you travel around the Muslim majority countries, it's quite clear that we have a caricature of the West. But when we are living in the West, it's quite clear that we have the same with Islam. The perception of Islam, which is essentialized into something which is mainly negative. The surveys and what is produced today and what is heard in the West is mainly negative about Islam. So we can just work on that and say, okay, we have a problem of perceptions, we have a problem of understanding and trust. And we can on both sides think that at the end of the day we are the victims of the perceptions of the other. And that's not completely wrong, but it's not the way to solve the problem. And this is why, for the last 25 years, my main task was to come from within my own tradition and to ask the questions from within. It might be that we can blame the other, but we may have to start with ourselves. To come from within and to try to understand what are the challenges and in which way we can solve the problems. And I would say that we all have to do that. It's the starting point of a deep faith, which is to have a critical thinking and a critical approach towards our own tradition, our own culture, and our own way to understand things and maybe to reassess that. And this is the point that we will try to tackle today. So the second point is, when it comes to this discussion from within the Islamic tradition, from within the Islamic majority societies or within the Muslim communities in the West, facing the challenges of our time, is to ask ourselves, what are these problems that we are facing and what are the priorities? And this is to set an agenda for reform which is not based on the perceptions of the West, but the priorities of ourselves from within. And I think that this is something which is to transform our attitude and to change the mindset, which means a shift here between being the object of your perception to the subject of our history. And it means an attitude of assertive and confident, critical posture in order to assess what are the problems. So this is my invitation to Muslims, but it's also an invitation to non-Muslims to be able to listen to this Because when you get this discussion from within, even though you may be outside the universe or the Islamic universe of reference, you get a sense that it's very complex. And if at the end of this talk, the people who are not Muslims in this room go out and say, wow, it's complex, I will get my point. Because when you get the sense of the complexity of the other, you are nurtured by a sense of intellectual humility, which is essential for me. Because if we are serious about dialogue, start with being intellectually humble. This intellectual humility means that the other is very complex, is as complex as my universe of reference. So I have to be cautious when I am trying to set or to express a judgment. Suspend your judgment, open your mind. So this is the starting point of a process which has to do with what we should do within academia, in fact. And we are in the university, this is the critical thinking, this is the open mindedness that we are hoping to get and to nurture and to feed in our universities. So what are the priorities and how can we solve some of the problems that we are facing today? This is what I will try to address this evening, and I hope that with your questions at the end, I might be able to add some of the dimensions. You understand that in 45 minutes, just to solve or to tackle the problems that we are facing today is quite a short time. So, but to recognize that they are problems. So let me go through all this discussion in 5 main points. And I would say that the first problem that we are facing, and it has also to do with all this discussion of today and the perception from within that we find the Muslims having about themselves. You can't avoid the fact that the overall perception around the world is that Islam is a problem today, and Muslims have problems. It's true in the West, but it's true also in in Muslim majority countries. Well, in Muslim majority countries, you deal with Muslims, and they are the first to be very critical. In fact, if you listen to Muslims, they are very harsh with themselves. So there is a sense here that something is going wrong, that we are in a state of inferiority, that we are in a state of crisis, and we have to find solutions, and sometimes we blame the government, sometimes we blame the scholars, sometimes there is always someone to blame. And then we come to ourselves and ask, what is the deep problem here? When you are perceived, or you perceive yourself in a state of weakness, or you victimize yourself, or you think that the others have a negative understanding of Islam, perception of Islam, you end up protecting yourself. And it's not new. It started in the 13th century, when the Muslims had the impression that the West was now being the leading civilization. What was the first reaction? Which is an obvious, natural attitude and reaction. To stick to the rules and to stick to the limits. If I don't know who I am, if I'm scared of who you are, if I feel that I'm in a state of inferiority, the first thing that I'm going to do is to stick to the rules. These are my protections. And this obsession of the rules, it's important, but if you are obsessed with the rules, forgetting the meanings, you are losing the spirit. And even now in our societies, in societies that are scared, look at what is happening very often. For example, I was involved in the discussion about the burqa and the niqab, you know, the veil covering the face in France. And in many, many situations in the West, in Europe, for example. And it's quite interesting to see that there is a sense of weakness or mistrust or fear facing these people that we don't know, Arabs and Muslims,
just now becoming visible in our society, what is the first reaction? Law. We need law to protect ourselves from these people. We don't understand that at the end of the day it's education that is going to change minds. No, law to protect. This historical attitude is something that we find in all the societies. In the Muslim majority countries, in the Muslim communities, and among the Muslims today, this is what we have. Sometimes an obsession with rules and not coming back to the essence of what this religion is all about. So the first challenge today that we have to, if we want to reform the Muslim mind, is to come back to a deeper understanding of what this religion and this civilization is all about. And in fact, it's really to understand the very meaning of what we say when we say we worship one God. So the oneness of God as the central and fundamental principle of Islam. This acknowledgement that there is one God, this belief which is central in Islam, has a meaning. It's not only that I come and say there is one God. Everything which is coming with one God means in the name of this one God, you should know what is the meaning of your life. And you will never get the meaning of your life if you don't go through a process of education. So, God in Arabic is Allah. And by the way, the Christians, when they pray God in Arabic, they say Allah. So it's not the Arab, the God of the Arabs. It's the name of God in Arabic. And then, when you go to the Quran, you understand and you see that God sometimes is talking to the people